Hey folks, and welcome to Solarcabin channel. I was just out in the early morning here with my dogs, getting our morning chores done and playing a little ball, and started walking around my yard and thinking about some things that maybe I can tell people that are just getting started in doing homesteading, whether you're off-grid or you're just building a homestead or something like that. And one of the things that can kind of be frustrating to new homesteaders is some things can happen right away, and some things take time. And that's what I'm going to talk about here, is that some things like you can grow a garden right away, but it's going to take time for those plants to produce, and sometimes you have to keep working the soil and amending it to make it produce even better. Now this is one of my tomatoes off of my 2 plants that I have here, and it's taken me quite a few years to find a variety of tomato that would actually produce really well here in my environment. Now this year we had really hot weather, and my tomato plants have just done gangbusters this year. As you can see, this is still full. I've already taken about 30 tomatoes off of these. I've been giving away tomatoes to my neighbors, to my cousin, making salsa with them. I got more tomatoes than I could eat just off of 2 plants this year. Okay, so sometimes you get an abundance of harvest. If you have the right variety and you're willing to put in the time, and you can wait, for however long it takes to get your garden prepared, your soil prepared, and for things to grow. And it's the same thing for building a house. Sometimes you start with a small place, and then you have to save money in order to expand your house and add on additions. And that's how the old homesteaders did it too. They didn't start out building a great big house. It was usually a 1-room small cabin that they started in, like mine, and then they would build on additions later on when they had the money and the material and the supplies to do it. So don't be in so big of a rush to get started out that you think you have to have lots of money in order to do things around a homestead. Start small and plan it over time, working on the things that will produce the most benefit for you, and some things just take time. Garden you can grow in a year. If you get chickens, if you get them from chicks, it's probably going to take you 9 or 10 months before those chicks start laying eggs, and it'll probably be a year before they start laying regularly. So you need to expect that. You're not going to get chickens and have eggs right away, okay? Or any other type of animals. They all take time to grow, mature, and become productive. So keep that in mind when you're working on your homesteads. So I'm just going to kind of walk you around a little bit about, show you some of the things that I've got going on my homestead. But these things didn't happen overnight, and I didn't have a lot of money. In fact, I was pretty much broke, homeless, out of work when I started my homestead 20 years ago. It's taken a long time for me to develop these projects and systems and things like that work. And so I just want to impress on you that it's going to take you probably some time too. Unless you're rich, it's probably going to take you some time to develop your homesteads to be functional. But if you plan it out, you have an idea in your mind of how you want it to look, and you keep working on it each year, save up whatever money you can and put it towards that, then you'll have a good homestead, okay? So put this down and I'll kind of walk you around, just show you some of the projects I've been working on this year to improve my system. Here it is 20 years later, and I'm still working on my system, adding a few things as I have some more money and can afford to do them. So let's show you this. Okay, so one of the main things that I've done here at my homestead is I started out with just a really small power system. In fact, it was a 45-watt Harbor Freight system that I started off with, because that's all I could afford, and they were real expensive back then. But over the years, prices on solar have come way down, and so I've been able to increase my system. Now, I started out, and for the last 10 years, I've just had this system over here. This is a 400-watt system, and I made lots of videos showing all the stuff that I could run in my cabin, and it ran pretty much everything in my cabin that I needed to have running. But I didn't have a lot of extra power, and then this year, or excuse me, a couple of years ago, I started getting e-bikes because I wanted to replace my gas vehicles with an electric vehicle. I don't have enough power to charge up an electric car, but I could charge up an electric bike. So over there, under those covers, that's an electric bike and a motorcycle over there. I invested in some electric bikes because that's good transportation, cheap transportation that I can charge from just a small system. But I decided I needed more power than just what the 400 watt was giving me now, because I was charging up e-bikes. I was also wanting to run a second fridge that I could use as a freezer in the summer instead of just having a regular fridge that was too small to keep stuff frozen. So this year I'm adding another 400 watt
solar panel system. Okay, and these will be tied together from my main system. And then I also have, you can't see it, but up on my roof up there, there's 400 watts of solar power up there that is running into a Geniverse power station in the cabin. And then I also added, I used a couple of my old solar panels from my old system. These are old polycrystalline panels, but they still work really well. And I've just got them set up, and those are being used for a recharging station. And then I've got another one over here that's a 200 watt recharging station, which I've shown in some of my other videos. And this is on a trailer, so I can tip it up or down depending on where the sun is. And this is another 200 watt recharging station. Now, these are kind of temporary for now, because I needed something immediately to start charging up my e-bikes. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to be making these more of a permanent. I'm still going to have them so I can tilt them, but I'm going to be wiring these into two 200 amp hour LifePool 4 batteries that will give me an additional, well, when everything is done, I will have about 1.4 kilowatt of solar power now at my cabin, where I only had 400 watts before. I will have 1.4 kilowatts, and I will have about 800 amp hours of battery capacity with 2 large power stations and a smaller power station that I use here at the cabin. Now, that did not all happen at once, because I did not have the money, and no way I could have afforded that. It happened over time, and also with some help from some producers that sent me some products so that I could test them and review them for you guys. I was able to get this equipment so that I can now have extra power for charging things like my e-bike, running my microwave, running a second fridge, and things like that. So I'm trying to impress on you here that everything takes time. Don't expect it to happen all at once. You're going to have to plan out what it is that you can get by with. If you can just get by with a 400 watt system to start out with, that's a good size to start with. Then the next year, maybe add another 400 watt system, whatever you need to do until you get to the point where you have enough power and some excess to take care of your needs. Now, some other things that take time is yard work. And my yard was an absolute mess. I mean, this yard was nothing like it looked here. This yard was completely full of sagebrush and these Russian olive trees, and they had grown in here just thicker than thick. So when I moved here, I spent probably 2 years just clearing out sagebrush and Russian olive trees for this yard. And then this grass in here, it took time to all grow in. I've been throwing grass seed out almost every year. Right before the snow hits, I would throw grass seed out here, and then it would take off in spots and things like that. It didn't look nothing like this. This took years and years for this to get looking like this. Okay, it took a long time for me to put up a fence. For a long time, I had no fence out there on the front of the road. I finally had some extra money, and I paid for some rails, some of those landscape posts, and I built that fence one year. Okay, that was my project for that year that I had an extra money for. Things like that you can do. So, again, here, it all takes time, and you're going to have to plan it out. Now, some other things back here is I planted fruit trees. And if you know fruit trees, they can take a long time to produce. And I was quite frustrated because, man, it was taking them a long time to produce. Last year, they produced just a few small apples, and none of them really got ripe enough to eat. But this year, I got the benefit of that extra heat. And as you can see, my fruit trees there, those are 2 Sugar Crisp fruit trees, one there and one over there. And you can see that they have good apples on them, and big apples, and they're starting to get a blush on them, which means they're just about ready to eat. And Sugar Crisp apples are one of my favorites. But that has taken 7 years to reach this point, okay? That's how long you're going to wait for a lot of orchard trees and things like that to start actually producing. Some will produce a little bit faster than that, but you can probably count on 5 to 7 years before an orchard or an apple tree or a lot of the fruit trees will start producing. A few will start producing sooner than that. But, those are all things that you're going to have to wait for, to plan for, and, use your money wisely to always be planning on adapting your homestead to make it better each year. And that's where I tell people that's what you ought to invest in instead of the stock market or gold or some other fanciful idea of getting rich. Invest in your homesteads. All right? Put aside that money each year for whatever projects that you need to work on for your homestead to make it functional and livable. Do those first. Then if you have some extra money and you want to invest in something, or do a little gambling on the stock market or something like that, okay, that's all right. But don't risk the money that you need, that you should be investing in your homesteads. And put that in, because that is an investment that is going to pay off, okay? That is an investment that you will look at and be able to use for years and years to help take care of you and your families. All right, folks, I hope you enjoyed this video and you got something out of it. Again, I just want to impress on people, it all takes time and it takes some money. So, plan appropriately and try and invest in your homesteads. That is the biggest payoff that you will get out of life, is if you can invest in a safe and happy homestead. All right, folks, have a great day.